Hello. Happy Friday. Happy final Friday of August. This is the sixth episode of Soul Sister Live, and I am going to set up the um, Instagram sharing so that you can actually see both of us.
For the autumn season.
And
I
then
create crystal infused journals, beautiful one-off designs, and also custom designs. The page that I am on now is my personal page. So I am a feminine flow coach. I help women create personal systems that allow them to embody a more feminine way of being. Um, let's just say encourage them to take the path of the least resistance. So many of us have been conditioned to take the path of the most resistance, actually, without even realizing. Um, and as women, there are so many ways that we can tap into ourselves and our bodies, to be in flow and to allow things to come to us with ease, and to allow our day to day to be a lot more easeful while also being abundant and while also thriving. So I help women with that. And you can head over to the link in my bio to see what my coaching entails, and also book a free discovery call as well. I have a group coaching program coming up, so definitely stay tuned for that and follow my page to hear more on that, and just general kind of feminine flow tips as well that I share throughout the week. But that is me. That is
oh,
me.
that's awesome. Look, listen, I'm like, I should have stayed to hear the updates because I don't know all the damn updates,
You
Livia.
didn't hear the update?
So I heard some of them from the other room. I was getting the YouTube set up, and I heard about doing flow coaching. Is that what you said?
Yes, feminine flow coaching. So I was saying how I was
So
just
listen,
laughing because you did not hear a
I
thing.
did go. I was running like a little chicken with my head cut off. But what I will do is watch the replay my damn self to get to get the updates because that's super cool. But how are you doing on like a personal level? Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday. Happy, lovely, divine, feminine Friday.
Yes.
I am doing well. I am in a really, really great space. I am definitely in a season of flow myself.
Okay.
Feeling really good, feeling really in touch with myself and my creativity, and just have a lot to share and a lot that's coming out of me. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm good. How are
That's
you?
awesome. I'm doing well as well. I am so shocked that we're at the end of August.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
wild to think that there's literally 4 months left in the year. Huh? Like, I feel like we just started the year.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's been kind of a whirlwind, but all good things. Like, I've been reflecting on how transformative the year has been in these
yeah.
8 months. And my mind is blown. And I'm
Mm,
just excited for everything to come.
yeah.
So, like I said, I did set up the YouTube.
Okay.
So, if you join on our page, the Soul Sister series YouTube page, you should be able to see me because I know that's kind of awkward that you just see a black screen, which
I'm just
also
like,
Instagram, like, you are so dirty for that. You are so
why did
dirty
Instagram do
on
that?
Friday. Also, wanted to address the fact that we're missing a sister.
Yeah, that part.
We're missing a sister. So, as you know, or you may not know if this is your first time joining, Marie, who is the third in this triad of Soul Sisters, is actually still in London. She lives there, which means that she's about a 5 hour delay from us. So, or no,
Yeah,
advancement. We're in delay.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so where it's like 5 o'clock Eastern time for me and Liv, Marie is well into the night. And so, just for scheduling purposes, we're going to get her input during a better time. But I did want to have this conversation regardless with Olivia because obviously they came from the same. Oh, you don't know the topic. Let me tell you the topic and then I can tell you why this makes
Yeah.
sense. So, the topic this month is, or you could probably see it on the title, childhood conditioning. which is really interesting. And we've cultivated some questions that I think will make for a very fruitful and juicy discussion. And since Marie and Livia are actually blood sisters, they had the same parents and grew up in the same home and experienced probably very similar childhoods. However, I thought since Marie couldn't join this time, it would be really cool to talk to Livia first and then have Marie not watch this and then get her input to see how much they differed, to see how their childhoods were maybe separate within the same household in some ways, in some aspects. But yeah, unless there's anything that you want to add, I would love to jump in with question number one, Livia.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, okay. I mean, were you
And I
excited?
haven't.
I think you were saying you were excited about this topic too. Is there some stuff you need to get off your chest?
No, it's a great topic because I feel like it's something that I need to dive into a little bit deeper. And so I'm just interested to see what kind of comes up. I haven't seen the questions, by the way. I just do a lot better not
Okay.
looking at the questions.
Okay.
I just really like to just hear what comes up organically at the time when I'm first presented with the question.
Oh,
So
I love this.
yeah,
Okay. Well, listen, when I was writing the questions and I put this in the chat with you and Marie, I didn't think that I could even answer the questions
I
myself.
was laughing
So,
at that. I was like, what kind of questions to go to put?
it's nothing crazy. It's nothing crazy. I swear. It's just like I haven't thought about these questions. So
Right.
I am definitely going to be like spotlighting you a bit because I need to follow your lead in terms of like what to
Okay.
say because I don't even
Okay.
know. Okay. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into question number one. So, Livia, tell me, what are your earliest recollections from your childhood that shaped the way you view the world?
Ooh.
And a caveat to that question is, was it a particular experience that was very memorable, a conversation that was unforgettable, or otherwise?
Ooh, okay. This is a big one. Earliest childhood memory that helped shape my view of the world.
Mm.
Um, I feel like I can think back to what is probably my earliest childhood memory as a whole. But I think I don't know, it's hard to say which had taken shape on how I view the world. If I think back, okay, if I start with my earliest childhood memory and I'm really, really thinking back, um, I remember my third birthday. It's so random.
Whoa, that's wild. I didn't think that you could remember that far.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why, and I don't remember like the whole entire thing, but I remember being like, there's a nursery that I used to go to, and I remember there being like a long table. I don't know how long the table was. I'm three, so it would seem long to me.
Right.
I was at this long table, and I was like at the like head of the table. I'm like, people are singing "Happy Birthday" to me. I think that was my third birthday. I think it was. That's all I remember from that. I don't know. I don't know how significant that is. And even when I'm thinking about significance, the early memories that we do have, because they tend to be sporadic, I do wonder what is the reasoning behind us holding on to that memory, because there must be
Right.
something there, right?
Right.
Um, so I remember that. And I also remember, and it's funny because I was talking to Jamiro, my husband, about this the other day. Randomly, it came to mind, even though nothing is ever random, is it?
Right.
But I remember, I think I was four. I was four, and I was about to start what we call it reception. I guess it would be kindergarten in America,
Okay.
but I was about to start reception, and then, but before starting the school, there was like a meet and greet where all like the kids came, and then the parents went and talked to the teachers and stuff, and the kids were like all in this one big hall kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I just remember crying. Like, I think it was just overwhelming being around so many children. And I cried and cried and cried, and I wanted to leave. And I remember this distinctly. This is not like the third birthday memory. I remember this. And I also went on, when I started school, I cried every single
Oh
day.
my gosh.
Yeah, I was like four. You can ask Marie. She would tell you, because Marie's 5 years older than me. So I had just started school, and she was gonna leave and go to like what we call secondary school. So she had to be about, if I was 4 or 5 starting school, she was like
Wow.
9, 10.
Hmm.
So she had to like deal with me crying all the time.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember why you were so sad?
I think I, I think being around a lot of people, children, well, I was around a lot of children. I think it was really overwhelming for me.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because like my mum will say like going to school, and I remember this, going to school, I'll be like happy to go to school. Like I'll be skipping going to school, and then I'll be at school and I'll cry.
Oh wow. This
It's
is very interesting.
it's really interesting, and I feel like I was just a really I think I was a sponge. Maybe that's how I learned to not be such a sponge.
Like empathetic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um.
Okay. So
Or
it seems like that childhood memory, it almost like didn't teach you about the world, it taught you about yourself.
mm, yes, I think so,
Mm.
because I will say I am I am an empathetic person, but I have become skilled at protecting myself,
Okay. So
and
you
I
have to
feel
kind
like
of
that.
learn
Yeah,
to,
I feel like that's probably how it started.
okay.
Realizing that this world is too much. This world outside of my house is too much.
Which is also really interesting to me. Look, I'm like, I can't even get to question number two because because like as I'm thinking about our friendship, Livia, you know, you have always been like going against the grain. Like that's what I know about you that has been a constant throughout your life. But to know that like you going against the grain literally is from babyhood is wild. Like it wasn't even learned. You know what I'm saying? Like it was always this innate need to depart from the norm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I didn't even think about it like that, as like me going against the grain. Um, and it's interesting because this memory came up for me the other day. I don't know why I was thinking about it, just laughing. Like I would literally go to school every day and cry.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, that's mine. That is
That's
mine.
a deep one. You have rendered me speechless because I'm like, do I remember anything from my childhood? I don't know if I do. But that's a really fascinating one. And it actually gives me more insight on you as an adult, which is really special. I think one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is this is kind of strange, but I used to be a bit rebellious, like as a young child,
Okay.
and I would get in trouble a lot for like just doing things that were socially inappropriate in a mean way, like in a mean spirited way. Oh, we've had these
Oh,
conversations. Remember I told you I was mean in middle school and things? But like I used to do things like, okay, one of the memories that comes to mind is we were at recess or whatever, and like something just rose up in me to like grab some dirt and like put it in another girl's shirt. And like they were asking me, like, Tia, why did you do that? And I was just like, I'm not sure. I just felt
how old were
compelled.
you?
Oh my gosh. It was an after school program, but I was old enough to remember. I had to be maybe first gradish. So like in the States, that's what, 8? Like maybe seven, seven.
First,
No,
maybe
that's
like
too old.
seven, yeah, maybe like 6 or 7.
7, 6. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
6 or 7. Young. But I also remember like things like that where I would just feel this sudden urge. I think it was just like a lack of impulse control. Where I would feel the impulse to do something really mean spirited. And I think it was because I didn't quite understand social rules. And so
Mm,
I had to kind of understand like what was the appropriate social behavior
right.
around other people. And that just kind of taught me that in the world, like there are rules. Like you can't just do what you feel. You have to do what is appropriate
But then,
and
did you
considerate.
feel like it was, because you say mean spirited at the time? I don't know if you remember, but at the time when you were doing these acts, did you feel like it was coming from a mean place? Like, did you mean for it to come from a mean place?
No,
Okay.
No, I think honestly it was just like I felt an urge and like it was a neutral thing for me where it's just like, same thing as like you feel hunger and you just want a sandwich. It was just like I feel the need to put this dirt in this girl's shirt. And it's not because I want to be mean to her, it's just because I feel the urge to do it. And yeah, then when the consequence came, I was just kind of like bewildered, like, oh, so that's not what we
Mm.
do as human beings. Noted.
That is so hilarious, but it just makes me think, like, we all come into this world like just free, like unconditioned kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's you are, I would definitely say you are free spirited.
You
You
think?
know, yeah, and I just your energy is of a free spirit. And I feel like that's why it's like I'm laughing, but then I'm thinking about like stories you told me. I'm like, it's not too surprising.
Really? Wait, you have to
Because
break this down. I'm very
no,
confused.
because it's not like, oh, you were trying to be mean, but or the act itself, but just the energy of being like
Wild.
I think
A
it's wild the
wild
word.
beast.
Just like free. Kind of, and that's not to say, because sometimes you can say describe someone as free, and you might think that they act on that freeness all the time. And that's not necessarily the case, but it's just you have a free spirit energy about you, I would definitely say.
So interesting. Which is funny because I say to you all the time, like, of us three, like I'm living the most scripted lifestyle. I'm living the most regimented traditional lifestyle. So for you to feel like it's a compliment really that you think that I'm free because I don't always feel very free in these
And
systems.
that's the thing. And it's like I get what you're saying about you living the most kind of traditional, systematic kind of way.
Yeah.
And yes, but your spirit, Tia, is not
Tame.
with the word you're coming out with. It's like you're doing this because, like you said, like you've been shown as a child, this is what you do.
Yeah. I just had like an insight as we were talking about this, and then we can move on to the question number two because
Yeah.
I have y'all here all day. We're 36 minutes in on question one. A
No
mess.
way.
But no, the insight that came to me was so I've talked about on our platform many times that I've dealt with debilitating depression. And I think a lot of the time that depression came from like me wanting to be free, but like feeling the
Mm,
pressures of having to tame myself and then like feeling caged because it's just
yeah,
like, I want to be free. So then I like spiral into this depression where I'm like having this whole identity crisis of not knowing how to be because my spirit wants to be one way, but it's like not
yeah,
appropriate or not acceptable by the powers that I deem, worthy to be listened to be my true self and express my true nature.
yeah. I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. And I feel like
Mhm.
that, even that experience that you described as being a child, like that, I feel like that definitely contributed to it because it's like not. I'm sure not just the dirt. I'm sure there were other like little
Yeah.
things, but you were just being your explorative self, and
Hmm.
you were chastised for it, or you were told that that's not what you do, and you said you were like kind of bewildered, like, okay, um, but that
Yeah.
that continuing to happen over and over again, your spirit doesn't change, but you just learn that this is what happens if I do this. So it's better off if I be this particular
Right.
way, and you learn to just do that. But the spirit of you, that explorative spirit, it never went away.
It didn't. You're right. You are absolutely right. I'm going to tell you one more story just to make you laugh, Livia. It just came to my memory. So, as I'm learning the social rules of engagement, I did something else that was not nice. And I got pulled out of class once by my first grade teacher. I remember clearly. I got pulled out of class for it and I had a talking to. Now, this next part I don't remember, but my mom would always tell me this. So I guess another time in class after that experience, excuse me, that same teacher tried to get my attention. So I had braids in my hair and she tugged on one of my braids. And so I stood up and I said, "Can I talk to you outside, please?" And so
Carry on, because
so she actually listened. She went outside with me. And I explained to her how that I didn't like that she tugged my hair. And I asked her, please don't do that again. And I didn't understand why, like, she could pull me aside, but I
but
couldn't pull
you
her
couldn't pull
aside,
her as
you know? So again, just like trying to figure out the world. But yes, yes.
legitimate concerns and questions.
I'm telling you. But that and that's also goes to show like we have these social rules, but they are nonsensical
Yeah,
because like technically what's good for the goose should be good for the gander.
yeah,
If you offend me, why can't I pull you aside? You thought it was good enough to pull me aside, you
exactly.
know? So anywho. All right, let's jump into question number two.
Okay.
So in what ways do you see your childhood conditioning show up in your adult experiences? I feel like we've answered that question for me, but
Mm.
what do you feel like for you?
Um, that particular childhood experience, or just my childhood experiences as a whole?
As a whole.
How did my childhood experience show up in my adulthood? I definitely, even just going back to that experience that I described of just crying all the time, I think that has shown up in just how I've learned to protect myself. Um, or is protect myself the word? Just how I've learned to, I guess, filter the energies and information that I
Mhm.
get from the outside world.
Mhm.
Um, that definitely shows up in my adulthood now, and that's not something that I thought about really relating to those that period of my time
Mhm.
until now actually. But I feel like that definitely contributed towards that. Um, and I think, oh, I don't know. I feel like there are definitely other childhood experiences that for sure um, have shown up and shaped how I kind of operate now. But I feel like it's not at this current point in my life, there aren't a lot because I feel like the experiences that did shape how I view the world, maybe not all of them were very helpful. And I've done a lot of work in my adulthood to
Undo.
find more conducive ways of operating in alignment with how I actually want to be operating and just in alignment with my actual truest self. So, um, yeah, I feel like there's definitely things that I have overcome. Definitely, definitely feel like there are blind spots, even just aha moments, even just now, like piecing together
Yeah.
that particular experience. So there are definitely things that I probably can't exactly pinpoint everything right now, but yeah, that's definitely one of the ways in which I've learned how to navigate throughout this realm.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about like coping mechanisms specifically that you learned in your childhood that weren't necessarily as helpful in your adulthood, like, do you have any specific examples of like something you had to undo?
Hmm. Um, I feel like I a down a downside that I feel like I have had, and now I'm thinking about it. I feel like I'm actively working through that successfully,
Mhm. Yeah.
but um, because of how sensitive I was to the world,
Hmm.
I kind of learned, especially earlier in my early life, to just kind of keep myself to myself. And while that was, you know,
Yep.
helping to kind of protect me and shelter me from these energies,
Hmm.
um, I kind of limited myself in how much I showed how much of myself I showed the world.
Okay.
Um, and because it can be easy to just find your like little piece of peace and not be around everybody or a lot of people and just get comfortable in
Yeah.
that. But I know that I'm here for more than that. So that's why um, I've had to, and I'm having to really exercise those tools and ways of coping outside of my comfortable little bubble
Yeah.
because it's not it's not sustainable, and it's also just not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be out there and sharing information and helping people, which I'm doing now and I'm doing more of. But I feel like even me as I'm going into further into my purpose, I feel like these are things that are going to come up um because I haven't, and I feel like we've had kind of conversations on this as well, like where I haven't um shown as much of myself to the world that I could or that I should be.
Yeah, you are definitely a very mysterious lady and a little bit spooky, but
Spooky. That
yeah,
is fun.
we talked
What
about
makes you
that.
say spooky?
You know, you're a little bit spooky. We talked about that. How you like horror
Oh
films
yeah,
and
oh yeah,
things. Like you're a
yeah.
bit
That part.
spooky.
No, I
Um,
agree. I agree. I just it's just funny just hearing you say it.
yeah, yeah, you are a little spooky. However, your coping mechanism that you learned is fascinating to me because that's very much so like an only child approach,
Mm.
or a child I would imagine that grew up in a very large family where they felt like drowned out. But you had a sister who was very close in age to you. And your brother didn't come until much, much later. So I would assume that you would want to be very expressive and kind of share everything. But that was the opposite experience. You kind of kept it to yourself.
Yeah, and even though in childhood now, like in adulthood, the age gap between memories is non-existent now is pretty much, but 5 years as a child, it takes a while for that gap to kind of close, because even being
Right.
a 6 7 8 year old, like Marie's becoming a teenager and
Right.
she's not, I'm her little sister, so I'm just the annoying. I used to be like, Marie. That's how she would say
That's what you
her
sounded
name.
like.
And being annoying and stuff. And so it's like, it wasn't that, like, especially as a child, like close in age, similar mm, mind frames, and just when you just think about it in terms of just societal, like we're just in different stages of our lives, and so it wasn't until um we got older and I became an older teenager and a young adult, and then the gap really started closing. It was like, okay, here we are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That makes total sense. That's fair.
yeah.
Um, Gosh, I have to go back to the question. Yeah, we already kind of answered this one for me. The ways in which my childhood conditioning showed up in my adult experiences, like not freeing myself, and feeling
Mm,
like I needed to be boxed in, I think is the biggest way that my childhood conditioning showed up in my adulthood. One way that I think it continues to show up in my adulthood, though, that I'm not really sure how to undo, excuse me, is like my relationship with finances, my
mhm.
relationship with intimacy, like the dynamics of my household growing up. Have definitely confused me in some ways of how to
Mm.
navigate when it comes to like intimacy. I mean, that's something that like as an adult I have struggled with. And then also like just from like a financial standpoint, being raised with a single mother who, did a great job, but didn't have the luxury of a second income. I had a lot of a scarcity mindset with money for a
Mm.
really, really, I'm talking about like last month, we've got through that. A really long time.
Yeah.
And I still have moments where I'm just like, I just go to the worst case scenario, like,
Mm.
and I
Yeah.
have a hard time remembering that I am abundant and I attract, wealth, and that I'm not going to die. If I want to buy
Yeah.
a hamburger, it's okay. Like if I, the
Not
hamburger was
a
$10, but
hamburger.
it's gonna be okay, Tia. It's okay.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. So yeah, those are definitely some of things that I can see. Are you
Yeah.
aware of any of your blind spots that you're just not sure how to overcome?
Um, I don't know. I think there was definitely the showing myself part. I can't say I'm fully aware of all of them. I think there has definitely been things around abundance that I mean, as of right now, I feel like I'm currently really just catapulting through those.
Okay.
Um yeah, and I that's been something that I've been actively just working on my mind frame just around abundance as a whole.
Hmm.
I feel like that's something I've been actively working on for a really long time, but I feel like the difference is you can in your mind consciously and technically understand something and be aware of the ways in which you are limiting yourself or unknowingly self sabotaging yourself. Um, but then the next level is to really integrate this stuff and get into the subconscious parts of your mind where it's like, I know I'm abundant and I know how this abundant stuff works. But if your internal programming is telling you do this or this is how you respond in this particular situation,
Yeah.
you're always going to do that even without even realizing. You're always
Right.
going to do the things that you're programmed to do,
Absolutely.
um, unless you consciously and intentionally override that. And the only way to override that is with action, even if you're feeling like this is all going to go to shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite literally, right?
Because
Quite
it's your
literally.
mind's protecting those parameters that you've set for yourself because you've learned these things about abundance or wealth or whatever it is. And so your mind is like a program, like, okay, this is the coding. If this particular situation occurs, this is how we respond. So you start responding in another way, your mind, your body is all gonna act like you're dying and you're not.
Yeah. 100%. Which is so interesting because you like absolutely catapulted us into question number three, which was how have you approached the process of reprogramming negative or unhelpful childhood conditioning? Which to you, from my understanding, is just damn do it. Just do it.
It, it's definitely do it, but it's also because our minds are such fragile little things.
Yeah.
We have to also be really, really mindful of just the energies that we surround ourselves with as well. So
Yep.
that is other people, the content we consume, the conversations that we have with others. Because especially if you've been a person that has been in like a mindset of lack, for example,
Hmm.
and you're actively working through that, but then you've been around people who are also of that mindset, and you start to kind of learn a few things and understand, okay, perhaps I need to operate in a different way. Sometimes it's not great to even have those conversations of growth with those particular people because they're gonna project even if they don't mean
Yeah.
to. But if that is still their setting, they're going to project advice and just things that are on that programming that you've been on. And
Yeah.
it's just so important to I guess build a level of self-trust in kind of, because sometimes we can build like a codependency with wanting to discuss things with others or wanting
Yeah.
to get
Permission.
some value. Just say it again.
Almost like permission.
Right.
Getting permission.
Getting permission, getting validation from others saying yes, you do this, when really and truly when you are actively working to override a personal setting or get yourself to the next level, it's you really need to kind of do that by yourself
Yeah.
for a period of time, because those who are not doing that are going to tell you that you're crazy or say be careful now, or they're going to say if you do this, it put all the kind of negative things in your head, and a lot of the time it's not even on purpose.
Right.
It's just that's what they are programmed to do. That's what they know.
Hmm. And for me, it's hard in those cases to know when to draw the line between this is a person who is projecting upon me versus they actually do have my best interest at heart, and maybe they have insight on the path that I want to go down, not necessarily being the one that is the most effective.
See, I feel like I had this conversation with Marie not too long ago because it's like
Mhm.
I was saying to her, it was about projection. I was saying everybody projects, and it's not always a with a negative intention or malice,
Yeah.
but just everyone projects based on their own beliefs and systems, and sometimes we can benefit positively
Right.
from those projections, because if it's a person who is of a more expansive mindset and believes that they can do anything, they're going to project that energy onto you because they believe that this is what's possible.
Yeah.
And so I think it just depends on where that person is at. If that person is in a place or has an energy that you want to welcome, and how they operate in life, and just how their life is in a general case, if that is something that you want to aspire to, then um I feel like it can be a good idea to take what they say and sit with it, but ultimately it's never, anyone's advice is never going to be exactly what you need to do. We have the
Right.
answer to that.
Right. Right. Because
And
it
so,
ultimately comes down to trusting yourself.
yeah, because everyone's projecting. I'm projecting
Mhm.
based on what I believe is possible.
Right. Right.
And
Oh,
so I'm
so
not
meta.
meaning to like project my views or anything onto you, but
Yeah.
how I speak to you, the advice I give you, is based on what I believe.
Right. And you are someone who is filled with a host of different experiences, and like you're only speaking from your own perspective, so that makes total sense. Yeah. I'm gonna have to chew on that. That might have to be
Mm,
like another soul sister topic that
yeah,
we bring up
yeah.
in a future episode. But yeah, I really like the advice that you said about like being very careful who you surround yourself with, being one of the ways that you can sort of reprogram negative or unhelpful thoughts.
Yeah.
Because the same people who taught you those things are probably not going to help you get through them. So it's important to
That
make better
is perfect. You
decisions.
said it perfectly. Like
Yeah.
literally.
Absolutely. So that's something I didn't even think about. I think when I wrote this question, and now after hearing you speak on it, the thing that has helped me reprogram some of my thoughts is just being very clear about what I value and what I
Mm,
want. Because if I'm focusing on what the actual value is for me, that's going to guide my behavior. And like anything that is negative or unhelpful is obviously probably going to take me away from that
mm,
value. So, like,
mm,
case in point, a value I have is to have partnership, right? Intimate partnership. The programming of my childhood might say, "Oh, it's so hard to find somebody. There ain't no good
mm,
people left. You know,
yeah.
it's just so bad out there, girl. And there's just so many women and so little men." And yet. But then when I think about my value of wanting partnership, those thoughts are unhelpful because if I value to be with someone, I have to believe that I can be the one to find what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to count out all of the odds against me. I want to delve into where the opportunities lie. And
Yeah.
there's where the reprogramming kind of happens for me, is like, okay, well, where can I go where the love is? You know,
Mm,
instead of me seeing all of the ways in which it is not available, where is it possibly available? And can I move towards that? So I try to do that in every area of my life. For me, and this is something that I learned from therapy, honestly, in reading a book that I will always recommend, The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russell Harris.
mm,
Um, he speaks very candidly in that book about how important it is for you to assess where your values lie, because that's
mm,
how life fulfillment is achieved, is you have to like be able to fulfill your own values and know
yeah.
what they are. So yeah, that's kind of like my 2 cents there. But in terms of thinking about the experience of raising your own child, Livia,
Mhm.
what areas do you feel passionate about approaching with more delicacy than you may have experienced in your childhood? That's also a very sensitive question. So if you're uncomfortable with answering, I do understand.
No, that's a really great question actually. Um, I think there are so many areas that I want to approach. Um, I, th- I I think the main thing is I intend to approach parenting and motherhood with a lot more, I feel, awareness, um, that perhaps wasn't there when I was being parented.
Mm,
And I think that's when I say awareness, I just mean I feel like in our parents kind of came from an era where it was just it wasn't this era that we're in now where it's like, okay, we're focusing on wellness and mental health and listening
yeah,
to our bodies and being guided. And
yeah.
so it was very much just do get this done. I'm following society. This is how things go. I'm not going to question it. This is just this is how my mother did it. This is how her mother did it.
Mhm.
This is how it's going to go. And I feel like anytime a free spirited child came in, it was like they're being behaved bad. They're behaving badly, or um, even just my example of crying all the time. Like if I have a daughter, and I'm gonna think about how I feel like that was responded to. I don't know if I really remember, but
Mm,
um, if I had a daughter who was crying all the time in these environments, being around a lot of people, I'm going to see that she's probably very empathetic and very sensitive, and I need
mhm,
to be careful about surrounding her with so many people. But I feel
mhm.
like the era in which I grew up in, it was like, I'm going to speak to my mum about this. I'm not entirely sure how she felt about my crying. And I'm not really sure how it was responded to, especially since like I would happily go to school and then cry at school. So it's strange. But
But there's something behind that, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's something behind that because it's almost like the separation between the idealized state that you have in your mind and like the reality. It's almost like you're living in this utopia, and like when you came to understand the reality of the situation, it was just like, wait,
like
this is
over
not the way
and
that
over
it should
again though.
be.
Like seriously.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but that's that childhood prefrontal cortex
Yeah.
underdevelopment.
Yeah. It's like I like the idea of like go to school, like great. And then get there and it's just all too much, you know? And so but I did, you know, I had to keep going to school. And now, you know, in that's obviously a whole other thing because if society says you go to school, that's just that, right? You go
Mhm.
to traditional school, especially in the times that we grew up, and you go to traditional school, that's just that.
Yeah.
You ain't got no choice. And so even I've been a person who have been really interested in when I do have children, homeschooling them,
Okay.
um, for many reasons, and there's so many ways in which to homeschool a child. Sometimes people think of homeschooling and it's like child's going to have no social interaction, and it's like there's literally so many different ways to homeschool that don't mean your child is locked up in a room in the house by
Mhm.
themselves all day,
Right.
because that's definitely not the aim, and they will absolutely be socialized. But even I feel like that's in the times that I grew up in, that wasn't a popular thing to homeschool children or to think of that there was another alternative to traditional school.
Okay.
But I'm I say all of this to say that if something is not working for my child and I can see that, I'm a person who's going to look for the alternative because there's a reason why my child's being affected so badly, or so just being so affected by particular experiences.
Mhm.
I will have the awareness to kind of dive deeper into that rather than saying, perhaps she's just a crybaby and she needs to get over it. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what I was
Right.
told. I don't really remember how it was responded to, but um, I just, yeah, had to keep going. And,
Yeah, because that's
character building and
correct.
everything.
That's the social order, right? Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you're sad, you have to go to work, you have to make money, you have to pay these bills, you have
right,
to survive. Like, that's the system. So, like, get with the program.
right, right.
Get with the
And so
program.
it's like, yeah, and you're right because it's a societal thing. It's with school, jobs, whatever. You just do this, don't matter how you're feeling. And so I feel like, you know, I'm gonna be approaching parenthood with the awareness that it doesn't have to go in one particular way.
Yeah. It's also really interesting to me that, well, I guess we're both still considered part of the Western world. And so, like, there's
Yeah,
always going to be these cultural similarities between, like, how we just approach life because we're both within like Western society.
yeah,
But as someone who is from the UK, I guess I was hoping that your childhood perspective of these topics would be a little different, but it's almost
mm,
identical.
yeah. Like you said, it is really a Western thing. I think. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, there's so many overlaps in just how society is run and has been run, and I think especially with places like the UK and America, there's definitely going to be a lot of
Yeah,
similarities there, just in
yeah.
terms of how what's expected of you and how society is run.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Honestly, Liv, I would say the exact same thing in terms of like um, what areas I feel passionate about exploring with more delicacy than like I was offered in my childhood. I was a very emotional child.
Mhm.
Um, wild, as we've deduced, but very emotional and sensitive and just like aware
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And I think that that was seen as just a couple of things. The first was inappropriate, like we
Mhm.
talked about. So instead of exploring like why I was doing certain things, it was just kind of like the yes or no of appropriateness. And then also it was seen as a weakness.
Mhm.
Like, I wouldn't be able to survive in the world by being so sensitive about everything. I used to hear that all the
Right.
time. Why are you so sensitive? And so,
Mhm.
when it comes to raising my own children, like you said, I really want to explore more of like, what about that particular stimuli, if you will, is causing this reaction in you? Not necessarily that your reaction is bad, but what is it about the way that you are perceiving this
Right.
trigger that is causing this reaction?
Yes.
So I think that would have been a lot more helpful for me. And I also think it just helps with like the emotional development of a child so that they can pinpoint that for themselves, and start to ask
Yes.
themselves these questions like, okay, I'm in a situation where for you with the schooling, this is not a threat. Like, I'm not in danger. So what
Mm.
is it within me that is causing this reaction?
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to kind of like resolve this for myself?
Right. Right. And it's really, I feel like it's really helpful to approach things in this way with children because then they're not growing up thinking that something's wrong with them. Because I feel like
Right.
that's what ends up happening. It's like you're kind of looked at as like a kind of alien, like you said, like why are you so sensitive? Or
Yes.
it's like it's a me problem. It's like no, like what? Why am I reacting in this way?
Mhm.
Especially as a child, like they're literally just fresh beings that
Yes.
haven't attached meaning to a lot of things yet. So,
Mhm.
as an adult, you might say, okay, why am I responding? There may be so many reasons as an adult why you're responding to something in a particular way,
Mhm.
but I feel like it's so pure when you're a child because you don't have a lot of associations with things. So if you're responding to something um, in a really big kind of way, a major way,
Mhm.
there's got to be there's a deeper reasoning behind that. It's not conditioning
Right.
because you haven't had a chance to be
Exactly.
conditioned yet.
Exactly. I used to write, I still do. We did it together, but letters to my future child.
Mm,
And I would say in those letters, like, I honestly think that like you're going to be the teacher,
Mm,
because with what you said about a child kind of having this very pure energy, it kind of makes you question like, why is this so normalized for me? Like, is there something that's actually going on that I have been conditioned to not recognize that is causing this reaction within my child? Maybe
right.
I need to reinvestigate like how I
Right.
have internalized these things that are not normal. Because when you really think about it, like cramming 30 to 40 kids in a classroom to teach them all, that doesn't feel natural, you know?
No. And I remember going to that introductory place before school even started, and it was too much. I was crying
Yeah,
like,
it's
"Where's my mother? It's time to
overwhelming.
go."
You spend all this time with your two parents or maybe one parent, and then like the next year, now you're in a school, not just with your classmates, but like the what do you call them, the administrators, like everyone who you've never met before, they're all strangers, and like that's just supposed to be a normal encounter.
I'm like, what is
Yeah,
this?
so that's a lot. I
Sounds
understand why
good,
you
but
cried. I understand why you cried. If I was less wild, maybe I would have cried too.
yeah. You know,
But I was an animal.
another. It's not so much of a memory because I don't remember this, but my mum told me that for a long time I didn't talk. Like I spoke, like I started talking kind of late. I guess she said, I don't know what age. There wasn't anything wrong with me, but she said when I started to talk, it's like I had my sentences formed. Like I wasn't going to talk unless I knew what I was talking about. But the moment I did start talking as a child, I knew what I was talking about.
That's so strange. That would
I
scare the
don't.
living daylights out of
I,
me. So you never babbled, you never.
she said I never used to speak. I'm gonna ask her again what age I actually started to speak. Like, because she said I didn't speak, and she was
What?
wondering why I wasn't speaking. And then when I did start to speak, like it was like I had been speaking.
That's crazy. Live.
And I don't know why that. I don't know why that would be. I don't. It's just interesting. I think about that sometimes because I'm like, what is that?
Can you imagine like you're with this infant who's not talking, and then all of a sudden they're like, so I've been watching the way you're handling things around here, and I've got some things to say about it. Oh gosh. I told you you're
Like
spooky. That's a little spooky.
that is a little spooky. And she said I used to like when I would like was a baby ish. I guess this must be the non-talking phase too. And I would used to get upset about something, or all she had to do was just raise her voice a little bit, and I wouldn't like boo why I cry, but my eyes would go really wide, and then there'll be like one teardrop that would just start falling down my face like a doll.
Girl, because you're an ancestor. That's why. That's why. Which we've covered. Oh gosh. Okay. Well,
Strange.
I have one final question for this
Yeah.
talk. And it's actually, as I'm reading it, very similar to the question that I just asked, but just kind
Okay.
of more internal. So, if you could reparent yourself, what are a few things that you would offer to support, the child in you?
Ooh. Um. If I could reparent myself, I would give myself. I guess let myself know that it's okay to be a little extra sensitive to your
Mm-hmm.
surroundings, um, and allow me the space to just feel comfortable to retreat a bit. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I I don't feel like I was always given room to, and this is awareness too, just given room to just not not be around.
Yeah.
As a child, you don't really have a choice to not be around. Growing up, for me anyway, it was like you go to the family events, you go to this, you're just taken,
Yeah.
you know. And so I feel like just being aware of my my sensitivity, especially at that young age, um, just measures taken to just recalibrate.
Hmm. Yeah, be more in tune with like yourself and your needs.
Yeah, and just be, I guess, have the time taken to understand understand me as a child. Why do I respond to things the way I do?
Mm,
Because I feel like when a parent takes the time to understand the child, it helps the child understand themselves, because
right.
now we're adults trying to go back in time and figure out
Yeah.
and piece the pieces together.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas if a child is taught how to do that as a child, like, okay, let's figure out why you respond in this way. Are you're extra sensitive in this area? You just really are a sponge to people's energies. Like, what is it? And if as a child you know that about yourself, instead of thinking that something is wrong with you, and you're giving the agency to do what you need to do to not be affected so much, I feel that can do wonders for a child, and especially a child going into adulthood. Like, you have a heightened sense of self. You know what you're about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super important. And, you know, I think like the whole movement of conscious parenting is really addressing a lot of that and filling in
Yeah.
those gaps, which I'm really glad to see that that's happening. I would agree with you. And I would say that that's absolutely a way that I would reparent myself as well. I also, and it's weird because, like, you know, you have to have a boundary with this, but I actually see an influencer on Instagram who does this. Her name is Raising Remy and, oh, I forget her other daughter's name, Ramo. Raising Remy and Ramo. She allows her daughter, she's South African, to just fail in things. Like she allows them to fall, she allows them to
Mm,
like go and
yeah.
touch things that they shouldn't be touching. And she just watches from afar. And I think that if I had the ability, because I was a very sheltered child,
Mm,
an only child, latchkey child, and you know, there was just a lot of feedback that I got from my mom about like what not to do and like fear-based feedback as well as what would happen if I did these
yeah.
things. I wish I kind of was able to sort of find out for myself because I think what happened
Mm,
in my adulthood is when I had a lot of freedom, I tested boundaries farther than I should have. And
okay.
I think that if I had more of an understanding of like how boundaries work, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
so I'm trying to find the right word. I just made really big mistakes. I made really
Okay.
big mistakes that I think could have been avoided. And yeah, we can say like I learned from the mistakes and that's the point of life, but also I'm still working through regret and there's some things that I absolutely regret in my life. And I think that if I have more of an understanding of like consequence as opposed to prevention, and
Mm,
fear based, like prevention from punishment, it could have helped me make better and wiser decisions. And maybe my prefrontal cortex would have developed a lot faster than it did. Because, girl, I feel like that thing just got intact. And I'm 30.
ooh,
So
yeah.
it's been a long road.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I feel like I agree in just terms of it's a lot of parenting. I feel like for our generation did involve just projection and fear, because it wasn't a lot of really legitimate reasoning behind being told not to do something, or just being kind of sheltered away from something,
Mhm.
or perhaps you were just sheltered but you wasn't even given the reason why. Or
Right. Just do it because I said so.
right, right. And I feel like having a child is literally like this is your project now.
Yeah.
This is like a child's like a little project, and you need to, see how they respond to things while also guiding them, but they're really paying attention.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't make sense, they're gonna try and find out a way to make it make sense for
Right.
them in even as an adult,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, because and I guess that comes with the unconscious parenting that many people have experienced. Because I feel like a lot of parents haven't seen their child as something to be nurtured and tended to, like a delicate project, but just the kid's here now. Like, you work around my life and just
Managed.
be quiet, sit in the back seat, don't do that because I said so.
Yeah.
And it's
Something
like,
to be managed.
this thing just came to earth. Like, you need
Yeah.
the child needs to learn a thing or two,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I feel like we should revisit this conversation when we have our children and then see, like,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Yes.
how our perspectives have changed. But I thank you for all of the great responses that you gave. I'm so fascinated to see how your sister is going to respond when I ask her these
Yeah, me
questions.
too.
Like, yes, and I'm gonna make sure that I watch this back to like have fresh in my mind what you said. So as I'm
Yeah.
listening to her break these things down, I'm like, oh, I noticed the differences or I
Yeah.
noticed the similarities.
Definitely
So
ask her about the crying because she'll tell
I'm
you.
gonna ask her about the crying,
And then
but
free.
I will ask her about that as well, the wailing. But super cool. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk. I'm actually also glad that I was able to talk to you one on one so that, you know, you could kind of
Yes.
formulate your answers without getting influenced by
Mm,
Marie.
right.
Because
Yes.
especially when you're remembering your past, sometimes like that restructuring is it's very easy for other people to restructure your memories. And so,
Mm,
anywho, thank you
yes.
for everyone who was able to join, and for everyone who was watching the replay. I hope that you gained something fruitful from this discussion and that you ask yourself these questions and see, you
Yeah.
know, how that resonates with you. But
Yes.
to lead us out, don't forget to follow us on YouTube. So, Soul Sister Series podcast, I think is part of the name on YouTube. And then we have an actual podcast on Spotify, Soul Sister Series podcast. And then we have a Facebook page under the same name. Follow Olivia Alexis Grant, which is her new handle for her life coaching, as well as Love3 LOV3 Livia for all of her journals and
Yes.
products on that end. And follow Marie as well at Ayana Unveiled for her crystal infused jewelry and at Unveiled underscore book club for her awesome book club that is coming back at the end of September. Thank you so much, Livia, for
Thank
joining.
you.
And
Yeah.
six
I really enjoyed
months.
this.
Yes, we made it 6 months. That's wild.
Wow. Yeah.
Wild. So
Yeah.
yes, but anyhow, happy Friday to everybody. Happy Friday to you, Livia. I'm gonna call you about
Okay.
Divine Feminine Fridays right after I end this live.
Okay.
But I love you dearly,
I love you
and until next
too.
time,
Till next time, my dear.
bye.
You keep the windows open up here?